Welcome to tonight's sleep story, which will guide you through a full day in the life of a Victorian lady in 1890s Boston, from the first light of dawn to the peaceful descent into evening slumber. You'll experience the gentle rhythms of a well-ordered household on Beacon Hill, one of America's most prestigious neighborhoods, where gas lamps still light the cobblestone streets and horse-drawn carriages carry ladies to their afternoon social calls. This story places you in the elegant shoes of Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore, mistress of a grand brick townhouse, as she manages her household, cares for her 3 young children, and navigates the intricate social customs of Boston's elite society. Through her day, you'll discover the satisfying routines of Victorian domestic life, from morning correspondence written with steel-nib pens to evening prayers in the nursery, from consulting with servants about weekly menus to the ritual of afternoon calling cards. But you'll also uncover the mysteries that lurk beneath the perfect surface, why certain rooms remain locked even to the mistress of the house, why the servants lower their voices when speaking of the first Mrs. Whitmore, and what really draws James to New York on his increasingly frequent business trips. Every household has its secrets, and the Whitmore residence on Beacon Hill is no exception. Throughout your story, you'll find gentle breathing and relaxation cues woven naturally into the narrative, matching the peaceful pace of a more gracious era when time moved to the rhythm of mantel clocks and church bells rather than the urgent demands of modern life. If you enjoyed this story, please click the like and subscribe buttons so we can continue bringing you these immersive journeys into the fascinating worlds of the past. Make yourself comfortable, and if you haven't already, let your eyes gently close as we begin your restful journey into the gaslit elegance of Victorian Boston. The year is 1894, and you are Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore, mistress of a grand brick townhouse on Boston's Beacon Hill. The city sleeps beneath a blanket of early autumn quiet. Your husband James is away on business to New York, leaving you to guide the household through another peaceful day. As the first hints of dawn approach through Belgian lace curtains, you stir in your 4-poster bed, surrounded by the gentle ticking of the Waltham mantel clock and the distant clip-clop of the milk wagon beginning its rounds on Beacon Street below. The first sensation is warmth, the weight of quilts filled with goose down, covered in imported French damask, and the lingering heat from the coal fire that burned low through the night in the bedroom grate, your eyes open to pre-dawn gray filtering through those Belgian lace curtains, a wedding gift from James's mother. The familiar shapes of your bedroom emerge from shadow, the tall mahogany wardrobe from Jordan Marsh, the marble-topped washstand with its rose-patterned porcelain set, the needlepoint chair where your morning dress waits, laid out by Mary the evening before. You stretch slowly beneath the covers, toes pointing toward the foot of the bed, arms reaching toward the carved headboard that came with James's family from Salem. The Irish linen sheets, monogrammed with your married initials, whisper against your cotton nightgown. The Waltham clock on the mantel chimes 6 times, each note resonating through the quiet house like drops of water in a still pond. Time to begin another day. You push back the covers, 3 quilts in all, the top one made by your grandmother in Philadelphia, and swing your feet to the floor. The Persian carpet is cool beneath bare feet, its intricate pattern of wine, reds and deep blues barely visible in the dim light. You know every swirl and flower of that pattern, purchased on your honeymoon trip to New York 5 years ago. Reaching for the matches on your bedside table, you strike one with a practiced motion. The sulfur scent blooms briefly, sharp and acrid as you light the oil lamp, adjusting the wick until a steady golden glow pushes back the shadows and illuminates the rose-papered walls. At the washstand, you pour water from the porcelain pitcher into its matching basin, both decorated with tiny blue forget-me-nots. The pattern is unfamiliar, not one you would have chosen, and Mary mentioned once that these belonged to the household before. Before what, she never said, and you've learned not to ask. The water is cold, drawn from the pitcher that sat all night in the cool room, and Mary will bring hot water shortly, but for now, the chill helps chase away the last wisps of sleep. You splash your face, the shock making you gasp softly, breath misting slightly in the cool morning air. The mirror above the washstand, framed in carved rosewood, reflects your face in the lamplight. Hair still neatly braided from the night, secured with a blue silk ribbon. You unwind the braid slowly, fingers working through the long chestnut strands until they fall loose past your shoulders, reaching nearly to your waist. A soft knock at the door, exactly on schedule, announces Mary's arrival. "Come," you call quietly, voice still touched with sleep, and she enters bearing a copper can of hot water, steam curling from its spout like morning fog. She's already dressed in her crisp uniform, black wool dress, white apron starched stiff, cap pinned precisely over her red hair. Mary O'Brien, 22 years old, came to you straight from the boat from County Cork 3 years ago and has proven herself invaluable. "Good morning, ma'am," she murmurs in her soft brogue, pouring the hot water into your basin. The steam rises, fogging the mirror momentarily, creating a veil between you and your reflection. "Good morning, Mary. Has Mrs. Murphy begun breakfast?" you ask, already knowing the answer, but maintaining the morning ritual. "Yes, ma'am. She's just stoking the range now, and the bread's already rising." Mary moves efficiently around the room, drawing back the heavy damask curtains to reveal a pink dawn sky over the Boston Common, where the elm trees are just beginning to turn gold with autumn. You wash more thoroughly now with the hot water, using the lavender soap from Paris that James brought back from his last voyage to Europe. The scent fills the small space, mixing with the smell of coal dust and lemon furniture polish that permeates every well-kept Boston home. Mary helps you out of your nightgown, white cotton with embroidered collar and cuffs, and into your morning corset, her fingers quick with the laces. Not too tight, just enough to provide the proper silhouette beneath your navy wool morning dress. You breathe steadily as she works, feeling your ribs gently confined, your posture automatically straightening. The dress itself is practical but elegant. Small mother-of-pearl buttons up the front, white linen collar and cuffs that can be removed for washing, a small bustle in back as fashion dictates. The wool is fine merino, soft against your skin, ordered specially from Hovey's on Summer Street. Mary fastens each button while you pin up your hair, creating the Gibson girl style that's become fashionable, though you've been wearing your hair similarly since before Mr. Gibson made it famous in his illustrations. A few tortoiseshell pins, a gift from your mother, hold everything in place. You add your small gold watch, pinning it to your bodice, a wedding gift from James. It keeps perfect time and bears your initials in delicate script. Dressed and ready for the day, you make your way to the nursery to check on the children before breakfast. The hallway is still dark, but you know every step, every creaking board, every table and chair. The Brussels carpet runner muffles your footsteps. Gas sconces line the walls, unlit now to save fuel. The gas bill has been frightful lately, and James has asked you to economize where possible. You pass the locked door at the end of the hall without pausing, though you're aware of it as always. The third-floor room that James keeps locked, saying only that it contains business papers that mustn't be disturbed. You have a key. Wives must have access in case of emergency, but something in his eyes when he gave it to you suggested strongly that emergencies should be rare indeed. You turn the crystal doorknob slowly, carefully, peering into the nursery where morning light is just beginning to filter through muslin curtains. 8-year-old Charles sleeps sprawled across his narrow iron bed, one arm dangling toward the floor, his toy soldiers scattered on the bedside table where he was playing before sleep. His dark hair, so like his father's, sticks up at odd angles despite Mrs. Patterson's efforts with pomade. 6-year-old Margaret curls tight like a cat in her white painted bed, blonde hair spread across her embroidered pillowcase, her favorite doll clutched to her chest. Baby Theodore, just 2 years old last month, sleeps in his crib, thumb firmly in mouth, making small sucking sounds. Their nurse, Mrs. Patterson, dozes in her rocking chair by the window, gray head nodding, knitting dropped in her aproned lap. She's been with the family since Charles was born, coming highly recommended from the Lowells. Satisfied all is well in the nursery kingdom, you descend the main staircase, hand sliding along the polished mahogany banister that the parlor maid, Bridget, polishes with beeswax every Monday. The house begins to wake around you. You can hear Mrs. Murphy rattling pans in the kitchen below, smell the first hints of baking bread and brewing coffee. The grandfather clock in the front hall, a wedding gift from your parents, shows 6:30. Its steady tick-tock provides a rhythm to your descent, each step matching its beat. You enter the morning room, your favorite space for the early hours when the house is still quiet. East-facing windows catch the best light, flooding the room with rosy dawn glow, and your writing desk, burled walnut with brass fittings, sits positioned to take advantage of it. The room smells of the potpourri you make each summer from roses from your own garden, mixed with lavender and orris root. Mary has already been here. Yesterday's ashes have been cleared from the small marble fireplace. the grate blackened and ready for evening. Fresh flowers, white chrysanthemums from the garden, stand in the Waterford crystal vase that was your grandmother's. The curtains, cream silk with hand-embroidered ivy, are drawn back and tied with tasseled cords. You settle at your desk, running fingers over the soft green leather writing pad, feeling the slight indentations from yesterday's letters. First task of the day, reviewing the household accounts. You open the Morocco leather ledger, its pages filled with your careful copperplate script, learned at Miss Porter's school so many years ago. The accounts tell the story of a well-run household, each entry a small victory against chaos and waste. Yesterday's entries, $1.50 to the fishmonger for Friday's haddock and oysters, 75 cents for lamp oil from Shreve's, $2 for the children's new winter stockings from Jordan Marsh. You add today's planned expenses. The grocer's boy will come this morning for the weekly order. The coal man is due with his delivery, hoping for good quality anthracite, not the dusty stuff he brought last time. And you need to pay Mrs. Henshaw for altering Margaret's dresses, letting down the hems as she grows so quickly. Your steel-nib pen scratches softly as you make notes in the margins, the sound like mice in the walls. The nib catches occasionally on the paper's grain, good quality paper from Crane's, with your monogram watermarked in the corner. You dip the pen in the crystal inkwell, watching the blue-black ink climb up the nib, then continue your notations. The morning light grows stronger, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air despite Bridget's best efforts with the feather duster. A gentle tap at the door interrupts your calculations. "Breakfast is served, ma'am," Mary announces, bobbing a small curtsy. You close the ledger, capping your pen carefully to prevent ink stains on the leather desktop. Rising, you smooth your skirts. The wool makes a soft swishing sound, and follow Mary to the breakfast room. The breakfast room adjoins the morning room, another bright space with windows overlooking your small back garden where the autumn roses still bloom. The table is set for one with the second best china. The Limoges is saved for company. James's place conspicuously empty at the head. Fine bone china painted with violets. Sterling silver flatware with your maiden initials. Irish linen napkin in its silver ring. Simple elegance as your mother taught you. Mrs. Murphy has prepared your usual morning fare. 2 soft-boiled eggs in silver cups, their tops already carefully removed, toast points cut into perfect triangles and arranged in the silver rack, homemade marmalade in its cut glass pot, and a steaming pot of tea under its cozy. You crack the first egg, pleased to find the yolk perfectly runny, just as you prefer. The toast crunches satisfactorily, still warm from the kitchen, and the marmalade is tart with orange peel, made from the recipe Mrs. Murphy brought from Galway. You pour tea from the spode pot, part of your wedding china, adding 1 lump of sugar with the silver tongs, watching it dissolve slowly in the amber liquid. The steam rises from the cup, carrying the scent of ceylon leaves imported by your father's company. As you eat, you review the day's obligations written in your small leather appointment book. Morning, meet with Mrs. Murphy about the week's menus. Respond to correspondence, 3 letters await. Supervise the children's lessons. Afternoon, pay calls on Mrs. Cabot and Mrs. Lodge, tedious but necessary. Tea with the ladies' auxiliary at 4, discussing the Christmas bazaar for the Orphans Fund. Evening, quiet supper with the children since James is away, then evening prayers and bedtime routines. A full but manageable day, typical for a woman of your position. The children's voices drift down from above, Charles's excited chatter, Margaret's softer tones, Theodore's delighted squeals. They're awake and full of morning energy. Soon they'll tumble into the breakfast room like puppies, full of energy and questions about everything under the sun. You finish your eggs, dabbing lips with the napkin, preparing yourself for the transition from solitary morning peace to the cheerful chaos of motherhood. Standing, you check your appearance in the gilt mirror above the sideboard. Hair still neat, collar straight, watch chain hanging properly. Time to greet the day properly. The children arrive in a whirlwind of morning enthusiasm, preceded by the sound of rapid footsteps on the stairs, despite Mrs. Patterson's admonishments to walk like ladies and gentlemen. Charles bounds in first, hair still tousled from sleep, despite Mrs. Patterson's efforts with brush and water. His sailor suit is slightly askew, and there's already a smudge on his collar. "Good morning, Mother," he calls, sliding into his chair with barely contained energy, making the china rattle slightly. Margaret follows more sedately, already every inch a proper young lady in her blue pinafore with white piping, blonde hair, neatly braided with matching blue ribbons. She drops a small curtsy before taking her seat, just as you've taught her. Mrs. Patterson carries Theodore, his chubby hands reaching for you, still in his white cotton gown. "Mama! Mama!" he crows with delight, and you take him into your arms, breathing in his sweet baby scent mixed with talcum powder and the faint aroma of lavender from his clothes press. You settle Theodore on your lap, his warm weight familiar and comforting, while the older children attack their porridge with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Mrs. Murphy has added honey and cream, just as they like it, and a sprinkle of cinnamon that makes the nursery breakfast special. "Small bites, Charles," you remind gently, as he shovels enthusiastically, already eyeing the toast and jam. "Yes, Mother," he mumbles through a full mouth, then remembers his manners and swallows before speaking again. "May I have strawberry jam today instead of marmalade?" Margaret eats with precise movements, already mimicking your manners, her small fingers managing the silver spoon with careful grace. You butter a piece of toast for Theodore, cutting it into tiny squares he can manage with his still clumsy fingers, watching as he immediately smears jam across his chin. "What lessons have you today?" you ask Charles, knowing the answer but enjoying his enthusiasm. He brightens considerably. Despite his abundant energy, he loves learning, especially anything involving the natural world. Latin with Mr. Pemberton at 9, then arithmetic, and he promised we could look at his new butterfly collection if I conjugate my verbs properly. He has specimens from Brazil, Mother, bright blue ones as big as my hand. His hands gesture wildly, nearly upsetting his milk glass. You steady it automatically. "And you, Margaret?" She sets down her spoon carefully on the edge of her bowl, just as you've shown her. French with Mademoiselle Dubois, then piano practice, then watercolors. Her small face scrunches slightly. Piano is not her favorite, though she has natural talent. "Practice makes perfect," you remind her gently. "Even Mozart had to practice when he was your age." After breakfast, you hand Theodore back to Mrs. Patterson. He protests briefly, but is distracted by the promise of playing with his Noah's Ark, and make your way down to the kitchen to consult with Mrs. Murphy. The back stairs are narrow, meant for servants, but you use them when visiting the domestic sphere. They're painted practical brown, not papered like the main stairs, and your footsteps echo differently here. The kitchen door swings open to reveal a world of purposeful activity. The kitchen is already warm from the great iron range, a Glenwood Grand that James insisted on buying last year despite the expense. Its fire burns steadily, heating not only the cooking surfaces, but warming water in the copper boiler alongside. The air smells of yeast and baking bread, coffee grounds, and the faint scent of yesterday's roast that never quite leaves. Mrs. Murphy, stout, capable, her gray hair pinned under a white cap, stands at the long deal table, rolling out pastry for tonight's meat pies. Flour dusts her strong forearms like snow. "Good morning, Mrs. Murphy," you greet her formally, though after 8 years, she's almost family. She bobs a curtsy, flour-dusted hands smoothing her apron automatically. "Morning, ma'am. I've the menu ready for your approval, and the grocer's boy should be here within the hour." Together you review the week's meals, written out in her careful hand. Roast beef with Yorkshire pudding for Sunday when James returns. His favorite. Fish on Friday as always. Good Protestant household that you are. A nice roast chicken for tomorrow when your mother comes to dine. Mutton stew for the servants' hall. You discuss quantities, prices, seasonal availability. October means apples are plentiful and cheap, but good vegetables are becoming scarce. Mrs. Murphy knows her business but appreciates being consulted, understanding that a good cook and a good mistress work in partnership. She also knows, without being told, to keep the accounts especially careful these days. The first Mrs. Whitmore, she mentioned once, never concerned herself with such details. The comment slipped out during a discussion of household supplies, and Mrs. Murphy's face had immediately closed, realizing her error. You'd pretended not to notice, filing the information away with other fragments gleaned over 5 years. "The grocer has lovely pears just now," she mentions, kneading dough with practiced movements. "Perhaps a tart for Sunday dessert? Mr. Whitmore is particularly fond of pear tart with custard." You agree. James does indeed love pear tart, especially with the custard made with real vanilla beans instead of extract. You make a note in your household book adding an extra $1 to the week's budget for the vanilla. Small luxuries that make a house a home. Back upstairs, the morning post has arrived, delivered by the postman, who walks his route twice daily. 3 letters wait on the silver tray in the front hall, along with the morning edition of the Boston Globe, still smelling of fresh printer's ink. You carry them to the morning room, settling again at your desk as the grandfather clock chimes 9. The house has fully awakened now. You can hear Bridget's voice as she chats with Mary while dusting the parlor. The sound of Charles's enthusiastic Latin recitation from the library. Margaret's careful scales on the piano. You slit open the first letter with your silver letter opener, a gift from your wedding. It's from your sister Catherine in Philadelphia, her handwriting still as perfect as when you were girls together at Miss Porter's. 4 pages of gossip and family news. Her eldest is being courted by a young lawyer. Her husband's business thrives. Won't you come for Thanksgiving? You'll respond with equal detail about your own life, maintaining the correspondence that binds families across distances. The second letter is from the Ladies' Auxiliary of Park Street Church, confirming your donation to the Orphans Fund and reminding you of today's meeting. Mrs. Henry Cabot Lodge will be presenting her ideas for the Christmas Bazaar. You make a note to bring your needlework samples. You've been embroidering handkerchiefs and pillowcases for the sale. The third letter makes you smile with genuine pleasure. James's familiar handwriting, posted from New York 2 days ago. The paper smells faintly of his tobacco, and you can almost hear his voice as you read. My dearest Eleanor, he writes, business progresses well, though these New York merchants drive a hard bargain. I hope to conclude by week's end and take the Friday evening train home. Kiss the children for me and tell Charles I found a splendid book on South American butterflies for his collection. The hotel is comfortable, but nothing compared to our own home and your dear presence. Your devoted husband, James. You read it twice, then tuck it into your desk drawer with his other letters tied with a blue ribbon. Time to respond to your correspondence. You select a sheet of your monogrammed stationery, cream-colored paper so thick you can barely bend it, with Mrs. James Whitmore embossed at the top in elegant script. Your pen moves across the page in measured strokes as you compose your response to James, the nib scratching softly. You tell him of Charles's excitement about the butterfly book, Margaret's progress in French. She can now recite Frère Jacques perfectly. Theodore's new tooth coming in, the small domestic details that paint a picture of home for a traveling husband. You sprinkle sand from the pewter pounce pot to dry the ink. It sparkles briefly in the morning sun before you tap it back into the pot. Then fold the letter precisely into thirds. The sealing wax, stored in its own small drawer, is scarlet red. You light the small spirit lamp kept for this purpose, holding the stick of wax to the flame until it begins to drip. Then create a perfect pool on the letter's fold. Your signet ring, worn on your right hand, presses into the warm wax, leaving the intertwined W of the Whitmore family crest. A satisfying completion to the morning ritual of correspondence. The morning progresses in pleasant routine, each hour marked by the chiming of clocks throughout the house. You move through the rooms like a ship's captain checking the rigging, ensuring all is shipshape. In the drawing room, you adjust a crooked picture, a landscape of Mount Washington that James particularly likes, painted by a local artist. The morning light reveals a film of dust on the frame despite yesterday's cleaning. You make a mental note to speak with Bridget about thoroughness. In the parlor, young Bridget herself is carefully dusting the whatnots, those peculiarly Victorian shelves designed to display countless china figurines, shells from the seashore, small photographs in silver frames. She's new, only 16, fresh from Southie with more enthusiasm than skill. You pause to show her the proper way to clean the delicate Dresden shepherdess that was your mother's. Hold it thus, you demonstrate, cradling the fragile porcelain, and dust with the grain of the fabric, not against it. These pieces are irreplaceable. Yes, ma'am, she says, eyes wide with the responsibility. I'll be ever so careful, ma'am. Her accent still carries traces of her parents' Ireland. At 11, you join Margaret for the end of her piano lesson in the front parlor. The piano, a Steinway square grand that takes up considerable space, was your wedding gift from your parents. Mademoiselle Dubois, a genteel exile from the French troubles who teaches all the Beacon Hill children, nods approvingly as Margaret plays a simple Mozart sonatina. Her small fingers don't quite span the octaves yet, but she plays with feeling, her face serious with concentration. The morning light through the lace curtains creates patterns on the piano's polished surface. You sit beside Margaret on the tufted bench, adding a gentle harmony in the bass to encourage her. Music fills the parlor, spilling out into the hall where Charles has escaped his Latin to listen. Non, non, ma petite, Mademoiselle corrects gently in her accented English. The fingering here must be just so. Think of little birds hopping from branch to branch. Margaret tries again, tongue poking out slightly with effort, and this time achieves the proper lilting rhythm. Très bien, Mademoiselle exclaims, and Margaret beams with pride. Luncheon is served at 1 o'clock precisely. A light affair, as is proper when the man of the house is away. Clear beef broth with tiny pasta stars that Mrs. Murphy calls pastina. Cold sliced chicken from yesterday's dinner arranged on a platter with watercress. Fresh bread still warm from the oven, and butter molded into roses with the wooden paddles Mrs. Murphy brought from Ireland. The children eat in the nursery with Mrs. Patterson, their chatter and laughter drifting down through the speaking tube, giving you a quiet moment to yourself. You take your meal in the morning room, preferring its informality when dining alone. Through the window, Beacon Street bustles with midday activity. Carriages rolling past with well-dressed ladies making their calls, delivery wagons stopping at neighboring houses, a knife grinder calling his trade with a bell. An organ grinder has set up on the corner, his monkey dancing for pennies, while a small crowd of children gathers. You watch the passing scene while sipping your soup, the silver spoon warm against your lips, thinking how this view never grows old despite seeing it daily for 5 years. After luncheon, it's time for the afternoon's social obligations. This is the immutable rhythm of Beacon Hill life. Mornings for household management, afternoons for society. Without these calls and visits, one would quickly find oneself outside the invisible but impermeable boundaries of proper Boston society. Mary helps you change into your calling dress, a burgundy silk with jet buttons that rustles satisfyingly when you walk. The bodice is intricately tucked and gathered, the sleeves fashionably puffed at the shoulders, then tight to the wrists. Your calling cards rest in their silver case, engraved with Mrs. James Whitmore, in copperplate script. 25 cards exactly. More would be presumptuous. Fewer would limit your calls. You add your good gloves, gray kid leather soft as butter, purchased from Hovey's and costing a dear price, but worth every penny for their perfect fit. Your calling bonnet is your pride. Black velvet with burgundy ribbons and one perfect ostrich plume that curves just so. Mary pins it carefully, making sure your hair shows to advantage beneath. A light wool cape completes the ensemble, necessary in the October chill. Patrick, the coachman who came with James from his father's house, has brought the carriage around to the front. It's modest compared to some. The Cabots have a full barouche with matched grays, but well kept, the black lacquer gleaming, and the brass fittings polished to mirror brightness. You settle into the leather seat, its familiar smell of saddle soap and age enveloping you, tucking a wool carriage rug over your knees against the autumn chill. Mrs. Cabot's first, Patrick, you instruct through the speaking tube, your breath misting in the cool air. Yes, ma'am. Louisburg Square it is, comes his reply, and the carriage lurches gently into motion, wheels rattling over cobblestones with a rhythm like drums. The ride through Beacon Hill is brief but pleasant. You pass familiar landmarks, the State House with its golden dome gleaming in the afternoon sun, the common where nursemaids push perambulators along the winding paths, Park Street Church, where you were married 5 years ago. Other carriages pass, and you exchange nods with acquaintances through the windows. Mrs. Adams in her dark blue Victoria, old Mrs. Parkman, who still insists on using a sedan chair like something from the last century. Each conveyance tells a story of its occupant's status and sensibilities. Mrs. Cabot receives in her drawing room on Louisburg Square the most fashionable address on the hill. The houses here face a private park, locked to all but residents, where an iron fence protects perfect grass and ancient elms. Her butler, ancient and dignified as an archbishop, takes your card on a silver tray, disappearing up the carpeted stairs to announce you. You wait in the hall, admiring the Brussels tapestry, and trying not to feel intimidated by the portraits of Cabot ancestors glaring down from gilded frames. Mrs. Cabot will receive you, the butler intones, and you follow him up to the drawing room, your silk skirts whispering against each carpeted step. The Cabot drawing room is a study in Boston propriety, dark mahogany furniture polished to glass-like perfection, heavy green velvet curtains that pool on the floor, portraits of stern Puritan ancestors gazing down with disapproval at modern frivolity. Every surface holds some treasure: Chinese export, porcelain, jade figurines, ivory miniatures, the accumulated wealth of generations of merchant princes. Mrs. Cabot herself embodies Beacon Hill society at its most formidable. Erect posture that would shame a general, silver hair in a perfect chignon without a single strand out of place, jet beads at her throat that belonged to John Cabot's mother. She's seated in a throne-like chair by the fire, working on some impossibly complex piece of needlepoint. "My dear Eleanor," she greets you, extending one thin hand without rising. "How lovely to see you. You're looking well. Tea?" The ritual unfolds exactly as it has for generations, as immutable as the tides. A maid in pristine uniform brings the tea service, Chinese export porcelain so thin you can see light through it, painted with scenes of pagodas and impossible birds. The tea itself is perfectly brewed, neither too strong nor too weak, served with paper-thin lemon slices and lumps of sugar broken just so. Cucumber sandwiches appear, crustless and cut into perfect triangles, along with petit fours from Bailey's that melt on the tongue. Conversation follows prescribed channels. You discuss the weather, unseasonably warm for October, don't you think? The new minister at Park Street Church. Quite eloquent, though perhaps a touch modern in his interpretations. The upcoming charity bazaar. I do hope we exceed last year's donations. Neither of you mentions anything of real import. That would be frightfully bad form. Mrs. Cabot's son's gambling debts, your concern about James's business ventures, the servant problem everyone faces, these remain carefully unspoken. 20 minutes exactly is the proper length for a call. You've timed it by the ornate ormolu clock on the mantel and rise precisely on time. To stay longer would presume too much on the acquaintance. To leave earlier would suggest dislike. "So kind of you to receive me," you murmur, gathering gloves and card case. "Always delighted to see you, my dear. Do give my regards to your husband." The maid appears as if by magic with your cape, and you're ushered out with perfect politeness that nevertheless makes clear your time is concluded. Back in the carriage, you direct Patrick to Mrs. Lodge's on Mount Vernon Street. The afternoon continues its stately progression, each call following the same pattern with minor variations. Mrs. Lodge serves chocolate instead of tea, a continental affectation. Mrs. Appleton on Chestnut Street shows off her new baby, the 7th, wrapped in enough lace to outfit a cathedral. At each house, you leave the appropriate number of cards, one for the lady of the house, 2 if her husband is someone James needs to maintain business relations with, an extra for any adult daughters. By 4 o'clock, your calling duties complete, you direct Patrick to the Park Street Church Parish House for the ladies' auxiliary meeting. Your feet ache slightly in your good boots. Fashion demands pointed toes and higher heels than comfort would dictate. The parish house, a modest brick building behind the grand church, bustles with feminine activity. Ladies are arriving from all directions, a rustling sea of silk and wool, feathers and flowers. The meeting room smells of tea and lavender water, furniture polish, and the faint mustiness that clings to all church buildings. Rows of uncomfortable wooden chairs face a small platform where Mrs. Henry Cabot Lodge, yes, that Lodge family, will hold forth about the Christmas bazaar. You find your usual seat between Mrs. Parkman and young Mrs. Sears, exchanging the pleasantries that oil the machinery of social interaction. Mrs. Lodge, formidable in purple bombazine despite the fact that her mourning period ended 2 years ago, calls the meeting to order with unnecessary raps of her ivory gavel. The Christmas bazaar planning unfolds with military precision. Committees for needlework, preserves, baked goods, the white elephant table. You volunteer for needlework as expected, and display the handkerchiefs you've embroidered with forget-me-nots and violets. "Exquisite work, Mrs. Whitmore," Mrs. Lodge pronounces, and you're assigned to head the handkerchief subcommittee, whether you want to or not. The meeting drones on, budget discussions, volunteer schedules, the delicate matter of whether Mrs. New Money Harrington should be allowed to contribute her rather gaudy quilts. You let your mind wander to household matters while maintaining an expression of polite attention. Theodore needs new shoes. Charles's winter coat is too small already. The coal bill must be paid before month's end. The mental ledger never stops tallying. Finally, blessed release comes at 5:30. You make your farewells, promising to have 20 handkerchiefs ready by December, and escape to the waiting carriage. "Home, Patrick," you say with relief, sinking back against the leather seats. The October afternoon is fading into early evening, gaslights beginning to flicker on throughout the city. The common looks mysterious in the gathering dusk, its paths winding between pools of light and shadow. Home embraces you with its familiar warmth and scents, beeswax polish, coal smoke, the potpourri you refresh weekly, the lingering aroma of baking from the kitchen. Mary appears to take your cape and bonnet, her face showing the quiet pleasure of a servant who's glad her mistress is home. "The children have been asking for you, ma'am," she says, unpinning your hat carefully. "Shall I tell Mrs. Patterson you'll take tea with them?" "Yes, Mary, I'll be there directly." You pause at the hall mirror to smooth your hair and adjust the lace at your throat. The face looking back shows the faint lines that come with motherhood and responsibility. You're 28 now, no longer the fresh debutante James married. But the eyes are still bright, the complexion still clear thanks to faithful use of Pond's cold cream, the figure still trim despite 3 children. Tea time with the children in the day nursery is your favorite hour when the formality of calls and committees falls away. Mrs. Patterson has them scrubbed and tidy, faces shining, hands clean, even Theodore somewhat presentable despite his talent for finding dirt. The nursery is warm and cheerful, a fire crackling in the grate, toys arranged on shelves, the rocking horse James brought from F.A. Schwartz, standing proud in the corner. "Mother!" Charles exclaims, jumping up from his spot on the rug where he's been arranging his tin soldiers in battle formation. "Mr. Pemberton showed us the most amazing butterfly. It's called a blue morpho, and its wings are like the sky. And did you know they taste with their feet?" The words tumble out in an excited rush. Margaret, more decorously, rises from her small chair where she's been practicing her sampler. "Good afternoon, Mother," she says with a little curtsy that makes you smile. "I finished 3 more letters. Would you like to see?" Even Theodore abandons his blocks to toddle over, arms raised. "Up! Up!" he demands imperiously, and you oblige, settling into the comfortable chair by the fire with him on your lap. His weight is solid and warm, his hair smelling of the lavender water Mrs. Patterson uses. Mrs. Murphy has sent up a proper nursery tea, bread and butter cut into fingers, strawberry jam in a little pot, seed cake rich with caraway, milk for the children, and tea for you in the everyday china. Charles regales you with butterfly facts while carefully spreading jam on his bread. He's learned that Mother doesn't listen as well when he talks with his mouth full. "Mr. Pemberton says if I keep doing well in Latin, he'll take me to the Natural History Museum to see their collection. They have specimens from all over the world. Maybe I could be a naturalist when I grow up, like Mr. Darwin. Do you think Father would mind?" "I think your father would want you to pursue whatever makes you happy," you tell him, though privately you know James has his heart set on Charles joining the shipping business. Time enough for those realities later. Margaret carefully offers you a cup from her miniature tea set, a Limoges replica of your own wedding china that her grandmother gave her last Christmas. "Would you like 1 lump or 2, Mother?" she asks seriously, holding the tiny sugar tongs. "1, please, darling." You pretend to sip the imaginary tea with appropriate appreciation. Delicious, you pour beautifully. She beams with pride, and you're struck again by how she's growing up, already mimicking the rituals she sees daily. Soon enough, she'll be making real calls, leaving real cards, navigating the same social waters you swim in daily. After tea, you supervise the evening activities. Charles works on his Latin exercises at the nursery table, occasionally asking for help with a particularly difficult conjugation. Your own Latin, drilled into you by the formidable Miss Henderson at Miss Porter's, proves useful yet again. Remember, amo, amas, amat. You guide him. I love, you love, he loves. The endings change, but the root remains the same. Margaret practices her piano scales in the parlor below. You can hear them drifting up through the floor, careful and precise, if not particularly musical. Theodore builds and destroys block towers with equal enthusiasm, crowing with delight each time they tumble. Mrs. Patterson knits in her corner, needles clicking rhythmically, keeping one eye on her charges. Dinner when James is away is a simpler affair, served early at 6 o'clock to accommodate the children's bedtime. You've given Mrs. Murphy permission to serve nursery food, nothing that requires the full dining room treatment. Tonight it's beef consommé with alphabet noodles that make Theodore giggle, baked cod with parsley sauce, Boston tradition demands fish at least twice weekly, mashed turnips from the root cellar, and apple pudding with custard sauce for dessert. The small dining room, less formal than the grand one used for company, feels cozy with just you and the children. The round table brings everyone close, and you've relaxed protocol enough to let Charles tell stories between courses. Even Margaret forgets her studied propriety enough to laugh when Theodore attempts to spell his name with the noodles, creating more mess than words. After dinner comes the evening ritual of preparing for bed. Modern conveniences make this easier than in your own childhood. The new bathroom James had installed last year has running water, both hot and cold, a marvel that still seems almost magical. You supervise baths, ensuring Charles actually uses soap despite his conviction that water alone suffices, helping Margaret rinse her long hair, preventing Theodore from drinking the bathwater. Clean and sweet-smelling in their nightclothes, Charles in his striped nightshirt, Margaret in her long white gown with pink ribbons, Theodore in his footed sleeping suit. The children gather for evening prayers. This is a sacred time, one you remember from your own childhood, your mother's soft voice guiding the familiar words. You settle in the low nursing chair by the fire, Theodore heavy in your lap, the older children kneeling on either side. Our Father, who art in heaven, you begin, and their voices join yours, high and sweet. The familiar words wrap around you all like a blanket. Personal petitions follow the Lord's Prayer. God bless Papa in New York, Margaret says earnestly. And make him come home soon, Charles adds, and bring the butterfly book he promised. You hide a smile at this practical addition. Buppies, Theodore contributes, which could mean butterflies or puppies or something else entirely. Yes, darling, God bless butterflies too, you agree, and his siblings giggle. Bedtime stories follow prayers, each child allowed to choose in turn. Tonight is Charles's choice, and he selects The Swiss Family Robinson, your bookmark marking last night's stopping point. Your voice rises and falls with the adventure of shipwreck and survival, Theodore's weight growing heavier as sleep claims him, his thumb finding its way to his mouth. Margaret's eyes droop despite her interest in the story, and even Charles yawns, though he protests he's not at all tired and could easily stay up until Father's bedtime. One by one, you tuck them into bed with the ritual each prefers. Theodore first, already deeply asleep, transferred carefully to his crib, with his favorite stuffed rabbit. You smooth his silky hair, adjusting the blanket just so, making sure the nightlight candle in its protective glass globe burns steadily. Margaret next, accepting a kiss on the forehead with drowsy dignity. Sweet dreams, darling. Tomorrow we'll work on your sampler together. Good night, Mother. I love you. The words said so easily catch at your heart every time. Finally, Charles, who at 8 considers himself nearly grown but still allows a quick embrace. Mother, do you really think I could be a naturalist? He asks, suddenly serious in the dim light. I think you can be anything you set your mind to, you tell him, smoothing his dark hair that's so like James's. But first, you must master Latin. He grins at this gentle reminder and burrows into his pillow. You know without looking that his toy soldier is hidden beneath it, standing guard through the night. The nursery settles into nighttime quiet. Mrs. Patterson takes up her knitting again in the chair between the children's rooms, where she'll doze until morning, alert to any cry or cough. The fire has been banked to last through the night, casting dancing shadows on the walls. You pause at the door, looking back at your sleeping children, feeling that fierce, protective love that still surprises you with its intensity. All is well in your small kingdom. Downstairs, the house prepares for night. You make your rounds like a ship's captain, checking the vessel before a voyage. In the kitchen, Mrs. Murphy is banking the range fire, covering the glowing coals with ash to keep them alive until morning. The day's dishes are washed and stacked in the dresser, tomorrow's bread dough rising under clean tea towels. The copper pots hang in gleaming rows, the floor has been scrubbed, everything speaks of good order and proper management. The grocer's boy came as expected, ma'am, Mrs. Murphy reports, though the sugar was dear, 10 cents more than last week. You discuss tomorrow's meals briefly, approve the menu, compliment her on the evening's pudding. Good night, Mrs. Murphy. Don't forget to check the back door bolt. Already done, ma'am. Sleep well. The kitchen staff, Mrs. Murphy, the scullery maid, Kate, and Tom, the boy who does the heavy work, will sit at the kitchen table for another hour, drinking tea and gossiping before seeking their beds in the attic. In the drawing room, you check that the windows are properly latched against the October night. The heavy curtains have been drawn by Bridget, shutting out the darkness and creating a cocoon of warmth and light. You adjust the fire screen, making sure no sparks can escape onto the Turkish carpet. The room looks perfect in the gaslight, every cushion plumped, every surface polished, ready for tomorrow's callers who may or may not come. You pause at James's desk in his study, running your fingers over the leather portfolio where he keeps important papers. The room smells of his tobacco, bay rum cologne, and the particular scent of leather and ink that means masculinity to you. His presence is strong here despite his absence. The desk drawers are locked. They always are when he travels now, a change from the early days of your marriage when everything was open between you. Only 3 more days until he returns. The house feels unbalanced without him, too quiet, too feminine, lacking the sound of his voice and footsteps. On the desk, barely visible beneath other papers, you glimpse the corner of a letter with unfamiliar handwriting. The return address says New York, but the name, Hartwell and Associates, means nothing to you. Lawyers, creditors, you don't touch it, don't investigate further. Good wives trust their husbands, and you are a good wife. The gas jets throughout the house must be checked, turned down but not off, providing enough light for necessary nighttime navigation. You perform this task automatically, your body knowing exactly how far to turn each key, which jets to leave burning. The grandfather clock chimes 9 as you complete your circuit of the ground floor. Time for your own evening rituals. You climb the main staircase one final time, hands sliding along the banister worn smooth by generations of Whitmore hands. The house settles around you with small creaks and sighs, wood adjusting to the cooler night temperatures. In your bedroom, Mary waits to help you undress, having laid out your nightclothes and turned down the bed. The fire crackles cheerfully, taking the chill from the air. The evening disrobing is its own ritual, layers removed in reverse order from the morning. Mary's fingers work the many buttons of your dress, each one a tiny prison releasing. The dress comes off, then the petticoats, 3 of them, each progressively plainer. Finally the corset, Mary's strong fingers working the laces loose. You breathe deeply as the bones release their grip, ribs expanding fully for the first time since morning. That's better, you murmur, and Mary smiles her understanding. The nightgown feels blissfully loose after the day's constraints, white cotton with tucked yoke and long sleeves, modest but comfortable. Mary takes down your hair, removing pins one by one until the heavy mass falls free. She brushes it with long, steady strokes, counting under her breath. 100 strokes, just as your mother taught you, just as you'll teach Margaret. The brush pulling through your hair is hypnotic, releasing the day's tensions with each pass. "Will there be anything else, ma'am?" Mary asks, folding your day clothes carefully over the chair for tomorrow's brushing and airing. "No, thank you, Mary. Good night." She bobs her curtsy and withdraws, closing the door with the soft click of a well-trained servant. You're alone at last, the day's public face set aside. The relief is physical, shoulders dropping, jaw unclenching, breath coming easier. But the day isn't quite finished. At your dressing table, you perform the final ritual of beauty maintenance. The silver-backed brush and mirror set, James's wedding gift, gleam in the lamplight. You study your reflection, not with vanity, but with the practical assessment of a woman who knows her appearance is part of her duty. Complexion still clear, no signs of the headaches that plague your sister. Eyes perhaps a bit tired, but that's to be expected with 3 young children and a household to manage. You open the ceramic jar of Pond's cold cream, the rose scent rising to meet you. Working it into your skin with circular motions, you massage away the day's small tensions. Forehead first, where worry lines threaten, then cheeks and chin, finally throat and hands. The cream is rich and soothing, a small luxury in a life that's comfortable but not extravagant. James does well in his business, but you're not Cabot wealthy, not Lodge wealthy. Comfortable middle class, respectable, secure. Your jewelry requires attention next. The small pearl earrings James gave you for your first anniversary, removed and placed in their velvet box. The cameo brooch that was your grandmother's, nestled in its own compartment. As you reach for your wedding ring, you notice something else in the jewelry box, a delicate gold locket you've never worn, tucked in the back corner. You found it once while reorganizing, but when you'd asked James about it, his face had closed like a door. "It was my mother's," he'd said, though you'd met his mother and never seen her wear such a thing. You remove your wedding ring last, placing it carefully in its velvet slot. Your finger feels naked without it, and you flex your hand, missing its familiar weight. But nighttime has its own freedoms. Rising from the dressing table, you check the room one final time. Windows latched, curtains drawn, fire screen in place. The gas jet turned down to barely a glow, just enough to navigate if the children need you in the night. Everything in its place, everything proper and correct. You've been well trained for this life, first by your mother, then by Miss Porter's, finally by experience itself. Your bed welcomes you like an old friend, the mattress filled with the finest horsehair, the sheets Irish linen worn soft with washing, the quilts made by your grandmother and great aunts, each stitch a connection to family past. You arrange the pillows just so, 2 for sleeping, 1 to prop you up for a few minutes of reading, but tonight you're too tired for your usual chapter of Dickens. The book lies unopened on the bedside table. Instead, you lie back and let your mind drift over the day. So many small tasks accomplished, so many rituals observed. Breakfast with the children, household accounts balanced, calls made and received, meetings attended, meals supervised, children bathed and put to bed. 1,000 tiny actions that add up to a life, a family, a place in the world. Tomorrow will bring more of the same, different calls, different meetings, but the same comfortable rhythm. Through the wall, you can hear the faint sounds of the house settling for sleep. Mary and Bridget climbing the back stairs to their attic rooms, giggling softly over some shared joke. Mrs. Murphy's heavier tread as she makes her final check of her domain. The occasional creak of boards contracting in the cooling air. These sounds are as familiar as your own heartbeat, the nighttime music of home. You think of James in his hotel room in New York, probably going over contracts one more time, his meticulous nature not allowing him to rest until every detail is perfect. Or so you tell yourself. The alternative, that these frequent trips serve another purpose, is not something a good wife dwells upon. By Friday evening, he'll be home, bringing presents for the children, stories of his trip, his solid presence filling the empty spaces in the house. You'll tell him about Charles's butterfly enthusiasm, Margaret's piano progress, Theodore's new words. He'll listen with real interest, this man you married who still surprises you with his attention to domestic details. And you won't ask about Hartwell and Associates, won't mention the locked room, won't wonder aloud why Mrs. Murphy sometimes looks at you with pity. The church bells of Boston mark the hour, 10 o'clock from Park Street Church, echoed moments later by Old South, then King's Chapel. The familiar progression of chimes creates a map of sound across the sleeping city. Between the bells, you hear the night watchman making his rounds, his voice carrying in the still air. 10 o'clock and all's well. The ancient cry, brought from Old England, still protecting the New England night. Your breathing has deepened without conscious thought, matching the slow rhythm of the house itself. In and out, rise and fall, like waves on a distant shore. Your body sinks deeper into the feather mattress, muscles releasing their last hold on wakefulness. The concerns of the day, tomorrow's meals, the coal bill, Charles's Latin, the Christmas bazaar, float past like autumn leaves on water, present but no longer urgent. One last conscious thought, a prayer of gratitude learned at your mother's knee and spoken every night since childhood. For this house solid around you, for the children safe in their beds, for James pursuing honest work, for servants who make this life possible, for health and sufficiency and peace. The familiar words don't need speaking aloud, they're written on your heart. Sleep comes gently, creeping up like fog from the harbor, soft and encompassing. The last thing you hear is the grandfather clock beginning to chime 10:30, but you're gone before it finishes, carried away on tides of exhaustion into dreams where tomorrow's duties wait patiently for dawn. In your dreams, you're already planning breakfast menus, calling cards, children's lessons, but for now, blessed rest claims you completely. The house wraps around you, protective as a shell, while Boston sleeps beyond your windows. Somewhere a train whistle sounds, lonely and distant. The fire settles in the grate with a soft sigh, and you, Eleanor Whitmore, wife and mother, mistress of this household, keeper of traditions and guardian of proprieties, sink into the deep restoration of well-earned sleep, ready to wake tomorrow and begin the beautiful ordinary dance once more.